comes to mind is that these Vandal are going to basically attack you on sight if they see you with their knife. So, and that's something that I was finding intriguing. So yeah,
I actually get how that would make sense. It would kind of be like, in fact, modern day. If you go around wearing army fatigues and you were never in the army, you're going to get your ass kicked.
Yeah. I've watched the videos on that one. But it's a gift from their parents, is what it is. So, reading more on that culture at the approximate age of about 14, they're literally kicked out of their parents' would-be home and say, "Go find yourself." And basically, it's not that the parents don't care in that culture; it's that they just, they're now part of the collective. They're no longer part of a family, and so we've done everything we could for you. Before you go, here's this knife. And so from then, it becomes go make a name for yourself and do good for the Spartan race, or in this case, the Vandal race. So that's the reason why the knife, I think, has a lot to do with it. But it's just one of those things that, if you could find one, I suppose that would probably be either a trophy or a viable thing to have.
That actually makes me wonder if the Vandal scythes are essentially an extension of that, because they have the blades.
Yeah.
The blades as well.
Yes.
And
I've seen that knife imagery in that too, and that's what I was thinking about, was that by having those knives in their ships, they also are extending forward. So basically, their religion has something to do with blades in general. That's where the tie-in is all here.
Well, okay, I understand knives having a cultural reference. I don't quite make the tie to religion, though, because the religion wouldn't that be something inherently spiritual?
Godric, have you ever known anybody that wears a cross?
Right, as in terms of symbolism, yes. But what spiritual entity or whatever might a knife symbolize?
So, well,
I mean, some kind of war god.
I'm just going to pull this out of my ass real quick, but
go for it.
Say the Vandal have this great god called, I don't know, we'll just use Ra since he's a kind of awesome god.
Steve.
Ra was this great Vandal warrior in life, and he had this extremely powerful knife. It had killed thousands, millions of people. And one day he was fighting his great nemesis, and then the nemesis managed to steal the knife from him and essentially tried killing him with his own knife. But the knife was so bound to Ra that it couldn't kill him. It just wouldn't work. And then Ra managed to get it back, killed his nemesis, and rose to godhood. That knife is the symbolism.
Yeah,
now, I'm gonna whip out my theory crafting ass out here, because apparently I have a big one too. This is just fun for me. So what I would do if I was a writer is I'd say that the knife is going to be symbolic of a great tragedy or a great travesty. They state that that UE does not know of a homeworld for the Vandal. So let's go ahead and make an illusion that, since there are no known Vandal females and there are no known Vandal homeworlds, is it possible that maybe the Vandal are an old and aging, dying race? There's an empty carrier. They can't explain why the carrier got empty. It's I want to call it X-51. It's one of those military designations.
Yeah,
anyway,
it's the carrier that they got all the sights
pull
off
all the sights out of, right? And so maybe these Vandal are actually the last remnants of a planetary race, and maybe their consorts got upset. So war is what caused their planet to be destroyed, so they would fight to the end. And so maybe that knife is a symbolism of fighting to the end. Now, that they did a DNA test, and so they know that the about the characters. They do know that the Vandals supposedly have a thorough DNA. So somehow or another, they are assumedly reproducing. Otherwise, they wouldn't have given us the document about how a 14-year-old would go out and do these things. But, I mean, it kind of is a stretch to say that maybe the knife had something to do with a great tragedy. And so that maybe they're trying to find their own homeworld again. Or maybe they've forgotten who their homeworld was or what it was. Maybe they had created a giant civil war because they're clans. They're not really a set group of races. They are clans bound to an individual kingship. And so maybe a civil war happened so much that they had destroyed their homeworld in the process.
Or they are part. There is a Vanduul home planet. The Vanduul that we see are just one of the clans that were cast out from the homeworld, and they're trying to find a new one. That's why they're waging combat on the UEE planets.
The symbolism of the knife, with the way that you describe it, it sounds less of a symbolism of fighting to the end and more of a symbolism of surviving.
Maybe.
I mean, if it's a symbolism of fighting to the end, why are you giving it to a 14-year-old when you kick him out? Because that seems more like you would be trying to push him to death, whereas symbolism of surviving, you're throwing him out into the world, but you're giving him this tool so he can survive and make something.
They say that each knife is made uniquely to the owner, so that's another thought that comes to mind. It's an interesting thing. If you can't tell, I've read up a lot on the Vandal backstory, and so this is something that I've been curious about since day one of learning about this. So basically, you're saying that the knife is, instead of a remembrance token, instead maybe it's a get strong and learn to wield this kind of token instead.
Yeah. Do you remember? I don't remember what it's called, but the story of the Minotaur.
Yes.
So basically, the son of the king was left with his mother out in the country, and the king left some stuff, some armor, sword, and I think like a note or something under this giant stone, that once the son was strong enough to move the stone, he could retrieve the stuff and go to his father. And well, the stuff that he got from that was a symbol in the same way of surviving and becoming stronger. Well, actually, the stone would be more so the symbol of becoming stronger, but you could have a very similar symbol with these knives. I mean, if the parents are crafting them for their children themselves,
yeah,
then you can start to see how it would be. I don't know the word, but you get what I'm trying to say, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It's basically, well, it feels like an heirloom too, and so like this is to remember us, and also this is to get, yeah, I can see where this is going.
But they don't give their knives to their children.
Yeah, and so it's not necessarily an heirloom in that manner. It's a remembrance token, maybe something along that line.
That actually makes me wonder if, first of all, do the female Vanduul have their knives? And second of all, this is just a weird theory that I'm coming up with here.
All right.
What if the Vanduul, basically, after they're kicked out, they go make a name for themselves, live their lives, and the Vanduul have such a small percentage of females compared to their males that
That becomes a breeding, yeah.
Yeah, it becomes a breeding thing, and once a Vandal is strong enough and he's got a knife that's been through so much, he finds a woman that will accept this knife and they become partners.
A marriage token, maybe?
Yeah.
Here's something that I had thought of a long time ago, and it's part of a story that I was writing separately. I'll share a little bit with you. Basically, the main characters and crew stumble upon a Vandal waste world. Now, what that means is that there are genetic... Vandal are obsessed with... If you remember the Spartans and you go back, anything that wasn't in perfect physical form was shunned, right? So let's just say that these are the Vandal that have 3 arms, or these are the Vandal that have no eyes. And let's say that they live a completely different life from what the ones that are waging war, you see. Let's say that, for example, they're, on this planet by themselves. And maybe that's where the women would be as well. So like maybe the weaker male specimens and the weaker female specimens and the regular female specimens might all live on the same section of the world. Because if it's to be assumed that strength is the main premise of the group, then stereotypically saying that we as people, as humans, our societies have always based women to be the weaker caste, which I have doubts on. Point is that would they consider the females to be considered waste and to be plotted along and thrown out and be ostracized, as well as the unfit males?
Well, what if women in the Vandal society are just for breeding?
That's another idea.